Hello and welcome to Chess Please. My name is Andy and today I wanted to go through one of my recent games which highlights the peak and the trough of playing chess all neatly in one nice little game. So this was a recent game against Rocco 3462 and it starts out pretty normally, nothing crazy. It's a Queen's Gambit game. Queen's Gambit declined, as I like to do, not partial to accepting the Gambit, and I don't advise you to be either, but you can if you want. I'm not a cop. But we rumble on through our couple of first moves, nobody really making any huge blunders or any vicious attacks, just nice little developy stuff here. Get our bishops out, little threat here with b4, just sort of corralling the bishop, and my bishop, at this stage you have a choice to kind of move back this direction or tuck back in here. I decided to tuck back in here for just kind of a love of this long diagonal, and that will come into play. File that away in the back of your mind as we continue on with the game. They get a nice fianchettoed bishop there, so equally rangy bishop, which will also come into the play. We have a brief opening of the center here as well, and again, neither of us finished our development. I'm castled here, we've the same amount of pieces out, but you know, maybe a little bit soon to start opening up the center. It happened, let them develop their bishop. Now at this stage the computer wanted me to trade off queens. I'm not sure why. Like, basically the line is queen takes, rook takes. So the computer wanted me to take the queen there. I didn't. I just pushed up this pawn here. Basically, I kind of started seeing I wanted to tuck this bishop back. I was worried about these pawns rumbling forward. So I wanted a little escape square. And also I was thinking about maybe a little bit of b5 action just to spook away this bishop a little bit. Again, file that one away. So we continue on for a couple of moves, get my queen onto the c-file because I actually didn't want to trade at this stage. And I thought this was a nice play for our queen to remain on some open files. c7 here or c2, often a good old spot for your queen. As Daniel Naroditsky says, the supporting actress role. She's not in the fray of things, not up in people's grill because she's too delicate or too easy to attack. So you want to keep her far away from the action, but controlling as many squares as possible. We do all this, that's absolutely fine. And now our bishop tucks into that little cubby we made earlier on with a6. And now we do see some action here, which is something that white should really respond to quicker than they end up doing so. So they take a bishop here, which, to be honest, I wasn't thrilled about when I saw it in the game, because only way to take back is with our g-pawn. And again, a king exposed along this file with an open file. Not the safest place for him to be, but a needs must. I'm not going to not capture back the bishop. So we take back the bishop with our g-pawn and we get on with our lives. They move their rook onto the c-file, a lovely spot for a rook to be on, an open c-file, x-raying the queen through a couple of minor pieces, but very quickly those pieces can get out of the way, and oftentimes with tempo. So, you know, it's definitely something to be aware of. Using the concept of danger levels, yes, I want to get my queen out of this x-ray when I can, but I can buy myself time, bring another piece into the game with tempo. This rook attacking this queen, obviously defended twice, a-okay, no chance of a trade happening there. But it's basically just to scare the queen off this file and control the d-file for myself. That all goes well. N to d2, that is, knight to d2, that is the first of the blunders in which you'll see a few in this game. And I believe it's because it doesn't do anything to stop this. The queen might have actually preferred to, I think, come out here might have made a little bit more sense. Again, none of that happens. They play knight to d2 and they allow this lovely b5. Just your kind of card carrying, normal to see fork of pieces. Often happens with minors and a pawn. Normally earlier on in the game when there's less space and everyone's kind of fighting in the middle of the board. But very simple maths, you have two pieces to move and you have one move to do it in if you can't gain any tempo elsewhere, so it's not the easiest one to get out of without losing a piece. They kind of buy themselves a little bit of time with a check in here, but a paper tiger, as Daniel Naroditsky says, nothing much that they can do after this. Start to build a bit of tempo or a bit of pressure here, like threatening to take this pawn here again, but they just don't have enough pieces in the attack at the moment. And what I noticed was this still remained unresolved, and there wasn't a great way for either of these pieces to move away to safety with tempo. So no rush to do this, no rush to take one of these, especially when there's a knight hanging, and that knight actually forms part of the defense of these pieces, and there's nothing stopping them moving that knight. Like, we kind of already can bank, unless something major changes with the setup of the board, that we're going to get one of these pieces because they remain forked. So take this one first, because that one's not going to stay hanging for long. So we take this, and now we're doing okay. We are exposed king, much more exposed than they are, but again, they just don't have the pieces, and we're about to get one more. So we shuffle our king around. They play e4, which is a blunder because I think it... Why is e4 blunder? Because queen to d8, queen to d8. I guess it just allows this trade and completely nullifies the attack for white. But ultimately, that doesn't happen. We play queen e5, kind of trying to trade off queens anyway, but they don't go for it, rightly so, I would say, because they need that queen to form any sort of attack here, particularly a piece down. And here is where the blunders from the title of this video comes in. Me cruising here thinking I've got a lovely bishop, we got a rook on the 7th rank, we got a queen in the middle of the board, we got a knight ready to spring into action, we got a bishop ready to come onto this long diagonal. Our king could be safer, but our opponent is all fine. That's what I'm thinking in my head, and then all of a sudden we just don't defend our rook at all. A complete and total blunder. We do take one of the pieces, which again remained forked. There was no rush to do that. So the advice I just gave, didn't take myself. And we just drop a rook. We just drop a full rook. So now counting material, because there was a bit of fireworks there. They've got one minor, we have 3. They have 2 rooks, we have 1. So 2 rooks or 1 rook for 2 minors. Probably a good enough going rate. Structure wise, they're probably a little bit better set up. So all pretty equal, but I think these bishops do give us a pretty distinct advantage. We get our queen, gobble up a free pawn, not opposed. Computer says a5 a little better, but to be honest, hard to turn down a free central pawn, especially when it's coming in defense of this pawn as well. Rook c3 is a mistake because I think like all of this action isn't quite going to, like, they do need to start an attack, but I think actually this knight getting off the rim, off the grim rim, might have been a little bit better, opening up some files, trading off this lovely bishop potentially. They don't do that. We get our bishop onto a gorgeous b7 square, which we'll factor in later on. And then the queen comes in, and this is scary looking, particularly with this threat. So you could end up with a oopsie, where are we going? Source code, lovely. You could end up with a situation where you got your rook here, king can only go here, queen here, and that's mate. So this needs to be reacted to very quickly. But thankfully we have a knight that was reasonably centralized, that can get there within the 2 moves it takes. So springing across here, even when the rook comes in, this does look very, very scary. But the knight here stymies that whole attack for quite a few moves. Like, potentially they could start to chip away with their pawns, but we got time. We have time. So we've blundered, but we've recovered. We're doing okay. And we drop our queen back because we don't want to get taken by the knight. And I also like just keeping my queen or any of my pieces. When I'm thinking about knights, I get forked way too often, get attacked by knights way too often. This little formation where you're 1 diagonal pace away from a knight, that means that the knight is going to actually have to take 4 moves to eventually take that piece. If obviously they're not going to, but it's just a weird bit of shelter from a knight. If you're 1 diagonal square away, they'd have to go like bang, 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 and then 4th for taking. So there's a lot of maneuvering, which they just will not have time for. We won't let them. But if you ever just need a shortcut, 1 diagonal space away from a knight, lovely place to be. So anyway, that happens. They move the king across because then this was a little bit pinned, but unfortunately that is not quite good enough. We bring our rook onto the d-file, open d-file. Listen, we'll take it. Again, a gorgeous place for our rook to be. And they start threatening something like h5 here, where this knight will fall. And then again, that attack starts to look pretty scary pretty quickly. However, we find our brilliancy in this particular position with b takes on f2. Just completely smashes through white's position in terms of defensively. There's not really a lot they can do. One of these rooks is going to bite the dust. If they take here, we just take with the queen. If wonder what happens if they do this. No, if they do that, we just take with this. And if they do this, something like this looks pretty good. Maybe not though. I'm sure it's fine. Oh yeah. Well, we have some definite threats in here. The main one I actually saw, because I know obviously this one is the most obvious, but what I was actually thinking of was if they were to take here, I probably would have done something like this, which I don't think is best, but I think it's fine. And then if king here, we just take here. Again, a lot of threats coming through, and any which way you do it after this bishop move, once you've crashed through there and you know that you can claim one of these rooks, and you have this bishop and you have this rook on an open file, and your king is relatively safe in this mini little fortress until this comes through. Once that bishop cracks on through, you can do that in any number of different ways. There's a lot of great ways to crack on through. The way we did it, they just moved their rook out of the way, and then we picked up the knight for free on the right hand side, which was lovely. And then this just right idea, wrong time. They might have been able to kind of stave off defeat, but one of the main reasons I wanted to share this game, lovely little mate in one here, bang. 3 pieces involved. We got the bishop that is pinning this pawn, we've got the queen obviously delivering the check, and then this bishop covering his escape square. All in all, quite a nice attack, I thought. Despite blundering a rook, a full rook, very little compensation, still had some pieces on some great squares. Opponent didn't play gorgeously, nor did I, but a lot of fun and a nice little mate in the end. But as I say, that's the highs and lows, the peak and pit, the feast or famine of chess at this level. So even when you drop a full rook, keep on going, see what sort of mischief you can get up to. Hope you had a good time. Let me know what your thought of the game in the comments, and feel free to stick around and subscribe if you're into this sort of nonsense. All the very best. Take it easy.